Hi, I'm Leah Vukmir, founder and president of PRESS, Parents Raising Educational Standards in Schools. PRESS is a Wisconsin-based organization of parents, grandparents, teachers, school board members, and concerned citizens committed to raising academic standards by increasing parental awareness and involvement in the school reform process. We formed PRESS in 1994 in response to a growing number of concerns regarding the direction of education in the state of Wisconsin. Since then, PRESS has also come to serve as a resource to parents and other organizations throughout the United States who share similar concerns. Our efforts are focused on getting teachers to use effective, proven teaching practices to teach basic skills and to provide a rigorous, broad, and content-rich educational experience for our children. Our mission statement is as follows. As the primary educators of our children, we believe it is our responsibility to assure that the philosophy and delivery of education be reflective of parents and the elected officials they have chosen to represent them. We believe that a strong academic curriculum should focus on quantifiable and verifiable methods and standards that prepare our children for a competitive world. Now let me tell you what happened in my life as a parent that led me to start PRESS. Or, as I like to call it, the day when, unbeknownst to me, I became a right-wing wacko. My 5-year-old daughter came home from school with a project called My Newspaper Journal. She was told to write whatever she wanted and use creative spelling to do it. Well, I learned that creative spelling meant my daughter could spell newspaper, N-O-O-Z, paper, and that was okay. Naturally, this concerned me, so I went to school and began asking questions. I spoke with the teacher and the principal. I was most interested in learning at what point they began actually correcting students' work. I was floored by the answer. The district officials said that, in the interest of not stifling student creativity, they don't start correcting their work until 2nd or 3rd grade. When I questioned the validity of this approach, the trouble started. I found that, like a lot of parents, my simple interest in my child's education was largely unwelcome. This did not stop me from continuing to raise awareness about the district's approach to spelling and reading, however. I spoke out at school board meetings and wrote letters to the local newspaper. Later, a friend told me that the superintendent and administrators had started a whispering campaign against me, calling me a right-wing wacko. Well, I can assure you I had no ideological agenda. I was just a concerned parent who didn't want these bureaucrats experimenting on my daughter. Nonetheless, I was summarily dismissed. Sadly, as you probably well know, my story is not uncommon. I am sure that you have a similar story that has jolted you into becoming an education reform activist as well. It's stories like these and many others that have led us, the parents of PRESS, to conclude there is a very real need for school reform. At a recent PRESS symposium, national education expert and co-author of The Educated Child, Chester E. Finn, Jr., asserted the dire need for reform in our schools.
At least since 1983, since the Nation at Risk report, we have known that our kids aren't learning enough, that our schools aren't doing well enough, that our education system isn't productive enough. This has been confirmed time and again in the 17 years since then. It's been confirmed by all manner of test scores, domestic and international. It's been evidenced in achievement gaps between rich kids and poor kids, between white kids and minority kids. It's evident from data of the National Assessment. It's evident from TIMSS data. It's evident from the college remediation rates. It's evident from the testimony of employers. It's evident from the testimony of college professors confronting freshmen who recently graduated from our high schools.
Many others in attendance at the symposium echoed Mr. Finn's appeal for reform through their own unique perspectives.
I would say that the vast majority of faculty members in schools of education are more concerned about educational philosophies and theories than they are about actual practices that work. And what happens is they start with some favored theories, usually the romantic theories that go back to the days of Rousseau, and have been perhaps modified a bit to know as today as what we call constructivism. And then they infer something from those theories about the practices that we should use. Unfortunately, they don't go the next step to looking at the results of what happens when we employ those practices. As an example, I would say, many of the practices that have been known as whole language, or today as balanced literacy, or today as the 3 cueing system, go back to some of the early romantic theories of the child as a, quote, natural learner of language. And the theories sound good. And then we infer some practices from those theories. We don't go the next step and look at the results, actually, of what happens with the kids when we employ those practices. And oftentimes, by the time we get around to actually trying to take a look at the results, it's after many years and many children who've turned out to be non-readers because of that.
The barriers are of 2 kinds. There's barriers at the state level and at the district level. And at the state level, there's the political reality that an entrenched bureaucracy has lots of different people to satisfy within an existing monolithic system, and that's very difficult. We have a very weak charter school law that there's been some success against beating against that charter law to get some charter choice going on in our suburbs, but it's still very difficult. At the district level, somebody said that the school board is a great example of a dysfunctional democracy. There's such great trust in the school board that the authorities that they've hired must know what they're talking about because they have such good credentials and the theory sounds so good. And we're paying all this property tax, and so therefore we must be getting something of value. And it's difficult to suggest that things may not be quite that way.
Our elementary enrollment has been going down for years. People are looking for other alternatives because they want a decent reading program and a decent math program for their children. And by my drawing attention to what was actually going on in the schools, they decided to investigate further before just sending their kid up the block to the local neighborhood school.
So I think there is far too much emphasis on the baggage that students bring and far too little emphasis on what teachers need to do to overcome those disadvantages. It's sometimes difficult when you have people who aren't interested in doing what is best for children, but instead interested in doing what's best for adults. Unfortunately, schools are now being designed for adults, not for children.
Some pointed arguments on the need for reform. So how does an organization like Press contribute to school reform?
When we're looking for an independent view at the Capitol, something other than the education establishment's view about what needs to happen, we count on Press. We count on parents. They know best about what sort of education their children need. They know what's working in the schools and what's not working in the schools for their children. And so we view them as sort of the independent auditors of the education establishment, and we really count on them on important pieces of legislation.
Oh, I can't tell you how helpful Press has been. It's always a resource, a credible resource that I can rely on for accurate information. I know if they don't have the information at hand, they can direct me where I need to go. The annual meetings I find to be truly inspiring and invigorating. I may be down from one of my latest defeats, and I come back energized and ready to tackle the issues again. And the other area it's been helpful in is a lot of times parents would come to me and say, what can I do about this? Where can I get information? And I can direct them to your organization and your website. So it's been invaluable to have a group like this in the community.
Parents are the consumer. They've got to be in charge. If they don't have a chance, then we might as well roll it up and give up on education reform, and for that matter, on education itself. Parents are actually the only force that I think will ultimately stand up to the entrenched bureaucracy. Many of them are intimidated by it. Many of them are put off by the difficulty of dealing with it. We have a whole chapter in our book on the educated child about the parent as education reformer, and it celebrates organizations actually just like Press, which have done a terrific job of organizing and motivating parents. I think this is very important. There are other allies. The business community can sometimes be rallied. The editorial boards can sometimes be rallied. There are other possibilities. But if the consumers of a bad product don't rise up and demand a good product, the providers of that product are going to continue selling the bad product.
Until we get a community behind schools that truly serves children and their educational needs, we are going to find ourselves mired in some of the same educational problems that we have. First of all, parents need to get involved in organizations like Press that promote the involvement of parents in high standards and passionate work. And if that happens, I think we're going to see our schools and our students do well.
Even though the theory says your children are going to be more motivated readers, they are going to be better readers if you do X, Y, and Z, the parent is the one who sees the child and says, but my child is not motivated to read. My child is not reading. And it's that kind of feedback that the educational system needs from parent after parent after parent after parent, I believe, to motivate the educational system to become more responsive to parents and to be more results-oriented. For example, at the state level, parents were very influential in getting the phonics bill passed in the state of Wisconsin. And I know of a number of instances around the state where parents are active on school boards, are on committees that are making proposals to school boards and so on, who have been effective at accomplishing some things that I think are in the right directions. Again, unfortunately, it's very difficult for them sometimes to make those changes, and there aren't as many changes as they might like to see or I might like to see, but I believe that they have been positive influences.
And a parents' organization like Press is absolutely crucial because it provides a forum for parents to realize they're not alone in the fight, that in fact they can draw upon the resources. There's someone they can go to who can put them in touch with other people who've been through what they are going through. An organization that can provide them the resources to put them in touch with the people who can say, okay, you may have some sense that this is bad math, but this is exactly why, this is the track record, this is the information, this is what's wrong with it, and also this is what you can do about it, to provide them with a roadmap and the organizational infrastructure. And unfortunately, this has been one of the problems of education reform over the years, that the other side is very well organized and highly structured, but that parents have not been able to find similar kinds of support. And Press has become, I think, a national model for exactly what parents can do.
Okay, so now that we've got you all inspired to champion reform in your child's education, what can you do about it? Well, getting involved with Press would be a good start, but I'll tell you more about that later. First, I'd like to share with you a few practical action steps you can take right now that will help you in your struggle to be heard. It's very important that you understand the hierarchy of power in your school, community, and state before you get started. This will allow you to effectively direct your efforts. It's always a good idea to begin at the classroom level and work your way up the ladder. Oftentimes, problems and concerns can be resolved within the classroom without involving the school principal or other administrators. If not, you will have to work your way up to the next level. Start with the teacher, then move to the principal, curriculum specialist, superintendent, local school board members, state school board members, state superintendent of instruction, state assembly and Senate Education Committee members and chairs, governor's education policy aide, and of course the governor. Keep in mind that each community and state will have a slightly different power structure. Always approach these representatives politely and respectfully. This may not always be easy when dealing with an emotionally charged issue facing your child's education. In the long run, however, you will maximize your effectiveness if you temper your emotions and raise your concerns in a matter-of-fact way. Keep your eye out for allies along the way. Don't assume that everyone in your school district is in lockstep. Oftentimes, teachers have the same concerns that you have, yet they may not be able to bring them up to their own administrators. Forming important alliances with these teachers and other parents will greatly increase your ability to reform. Throughout the process, however, be prepared to hear that you are just the parent and not the education expert. This is perhaps the most common response reported by parents. Bottom line, you are the expert on your child. You may not have a degree in education or have a series of alphabetic letters after your name, but you are still your child's primary educator. Don't be intimidated by attempts to minimize your concerns and expertise. Number 2, research your issues. This is the age of information. It's easier than ever to get the information you need to help you to make effective presentations in front of a school board or a legislative committee or neighborhood assemblies. Now be careful here. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Just pick 1 to 3 issues that you feel most strongly about and focus your information gathering efforts on those. If you try to tackle everything, you will be overwhelmed, believe me. Keep an eye out for newspaper and magazine articles, essays, and newsletters having to do with your issues. Start a file where you can gather these clippings. Don't forget to look at local and state curricular guides. A wealth of information about approaches to teaching can be obtained from these documents. Local guides can be obtained from your school principal. State standards and guides can be found on the internet or by contacting your State Department of Education. Also, if someone writes a letter to the editor in your paper or speaks on a television or radio show about your issue, call them up. That person may have a lot of useful information that you can add to your files. Seek out community groups that may have information about your school or about education reform in general. Taxpayer organizations, think tanks, and research foundations may have research that could be useful in your efforts. And of course, libraries and the internet afford access to treasure troves of information on any topic you may be interested in learning more about. Included with this tape is a list of resources that will also be helpful to you. Tip number 3, raise community awareness. Contact the media. Educators do it, politicians certainly do it, so why shouldn't parents do it? Courting the press is simply a reality of survival in the world of public affairs. Now, I'm not suggesting that you hold news conferences from your back porch every Sunday afternoon, but by sharing your knowledge on a particular issue with the press, you will help to educate them and add dimension to the public debate about educational issues. Whenever you find an article or hear a news segment about your issue, for example, contact that reporter by letter or send them an email. More often than you think, they'll be happy to learn of individuals or information that can provide detail, depth, or even controversy to their stories. When you do this, however, always be cordial towards the reporter, even if you strongly disagree with what they have presented thus far. Write out your point of view clearly and succinctly, including, if possible, copies of clippings and materials that support your position. It's also a good idea, whenever possible, to identify an organization or group that can be contacted in the future to represent your position. It's just a fact that the media tends to prefer spokespeople for groups rather than individuals when quoting or presenting a particular point of view on an issue. Another way to be heard is by writing letters to the editor. When a newspaper or magazine writes an article about the activities or inactivities of your school board, consider it your invitation to make your voice heard. The Letters to the Editor forum allows you to make your case at a time when your issue is a hot topic in the court of public opinion. A timely, well-written, well-substantiated letter can have significant community impact. It is a great way to get the attention of other parents who may not even realize that a problem exists. For those of you who'd rather not wait for your local paper to raise a particular issue, there are opinion editorials. Opinion editorials, or op-eds, are written by average citizens and are submitted to newspapers to express an opinion on a particular topic. Op-eds afford an excellent opportunity for concerned citizens to articulate the facts of complicated issues, particularly in those rare instances when your message is not being adequately or effectively communicated through the regular news coverage. A final way to get attention is to contact alternative media outlets. Besides contacting the print and television news media, consider approaching local talk radio hosts with your concerns. Individuals who run these radio programs are always looking for topics that will provoke stimulating on-air conversations. The best way to get their attention is to send them by fax or email a short, concise description of your particular issue. Don't get bogged down with details in your initial contact. Most hosts receive countless letters, faxes, and emails daily. You want yours to stand out. Be sure to include your full name and a phone number where you can be reached. Many hosts will want to verify your information before presenting it on the air. Press was able to attract statewide recognition in this very manner with appearances on local talk radio as well as the state public radio programming.
Well, education's always been a huge hot-button issue for talk radio. Well, one of the things I found is that this is one of those issues where people feel invested. and they want to learn about it and they want to talk about it. And part of the strength, I think, of radio is that it can be a kind of virtual town hall meeting, a place where parents who may think that they're alone, who may think they're the only ones who are having the problem, can realize that they're not alone and can talk with and share stories with other parents who are up against the same thing. The education establishment has a very well-established network, and they have a very well-established pattern of being able to get their message out. But parents often find themselves very isolated, and they need to be able to go to places where they can get their story told and realize that they're not alone in those experiences.
Tip number 4, presentations to school boards or at district public meetings. This one isn't easy, but it's one of the most important, most effective channels you have for making your opinions heard. Getting up in front of a group of people produces anxiety in most of us, and when that room is full of people trumpeting their professional credentials, the experience can be intimidating. The best way of dealing with this is to write out your opinion ahead of time so that you can refer to your transcript, or read it word for word during your presentation, ensuring that you deliver your message thoroughly and clearly. Remember to also give a copy of your transcript to any reporters present at the meeting. This is the best way of getting your message through to the press and reducing your chances for being misquoted. Some things to keep in mind when preparing your presentation. Be brief. Usually, comments at school board and district public meetings are limited to 5 to 10 minutes. Avoid attacks on individuals or opinions of individuals. Just use the time to present your own opinion. And consider using visual aids, such as flip charts, to enhance your presentation and give you added confidence in your delivery. Finally, remember to get as many parents as possible to contact school board members before important school board issues will be decided. School board members frequently get calls when a popular athletic program may be in question, but they rarely get calls from parents on curricular-related issues. You can use this to your advantage. Sometimes all it takes is 10 calls to alert them that trouble is brewing in the district. Tip number 5. Presentations to legislative committees present an even more daunting challenge to parents. However, the higher stakes can make for greater payoffs. Most daunting, perhaps, is the fact that committee chairmen generally will not allow you to read a prepared statement. They want you to simply speak your opinion. Nonetheless, bring a transcript anyway. In fact, bring several copies. Why? First of all, having your written statement nearby for referencing purposes will boost your confidence. Remember, at these meetings, you will be presenting to politicians who speak in public forums every day. These guys are pros, and this can be very intimidating. The better prepared you are, however, the more confident you will be. Secondly, having a copy of your written opinion gives you something to leave committee members and reporters in the event that you are not given time to speak or feel that you did not articulate your views thoroughly. Tip number 6, neighborhood presentations and coffees. Surprisingly, these sorts of casual get-togethers can sometimes be the most important way to initiate meaningful debate on education issues. Keep in mind, however, that people seldom agree completely on educational matters. Remember to remain friendly and positive in small gatherings like these. In these meetings, you might consider using videotapes whenever possible. A well put-together videotape can communicate a great deal of information quickly while serving as an effective catalyst for group discussion. Also, distributing articles, letters, and printed materials can help to stimulate continued interest in the subject of your get-together long after your meeting. And finally, my last tip for parents who want to make a difference in their child's education: form your own parent group modeled after Press. One person truly can make a difference. You can be that person. Start today by reviewing the information included with this tape. Begin to work your way through the advice tips provided in this tape. After you have a core group of interested parents, consider holding your first education conference. Bring in a speaker with expertise in an area of education with which you are concerned. Look to local businesses to support your event. If your speaker is an author, consider offering a book signing as part of your conference. Authors love the opportunity to pen their signatures and talk with their fans. For additional support and advice to get your group going, or for additional resources on the particular issue you may be addressing in your schools, contact Press. All of us at Press are very comfortable performing the various tasks I've described throughout this video. Every day, in a number of different forums, we work at helping to ensure the voices of parents are heard. We can assist you in your ongoing efforts as well. Additionally, your support of our efforts will ensure that we will be able to continue helping parents nationwide in their efforts to improve the lives of countless children. Your support as a concerned parent is invaluable to the success of Press, as we all strive to raise educational standards in schools.
So is there hope on the education reform horizon? That was the question Leah asked me. I'm more optimistic than I've been in many years. Despite missteps and false starts and backlashes, I see good things happening in the name of standards-based reform, in the name of competition and choice. I see many options coming at us fast. And I see a lot of good things happening at that intersection between standards-based reform and choice-based reform. But what really makes me bullish about the future is groups like this. The energized, committed, motivated, organized, unquenchable, unstoppable parents and other consumers that are saying we're not going to just be passive recipients of what the system wants to do to us. We're going to make it change. We're going to bring about changes that we think it needs and that our kids need. And so I want to end where I began by saluting Press and groups like it around the country for being the forces of change that we will need in the 21st century even more than we needed them in the 20th. Thank you for the water. Thank you for inviting me. It's time to turn the tables and let you all have your turn. There is a famous quip attributed to Oscar Wilde when he was taken to view Niagara Falls for the first time. It's really very nice, he said, but you know, it would be so much more impressive if it flowed the other way. Thank you very much.
To learn more about Press or to help support our efforts, please call us at 414-607-3950 or visit us on the web. I'm Leah Vukmir. Thanks for taking the time to learn more about Press. I look forward to working with you very soon.